I think we're gonna try it again.
Okay, so that red dot is good? Yeah. Okay. All right, let's reconvene then at 1:17. Little recess there for technical, and I think we're okay now. So Sheriff, go ahead with what you were saying, and then I think we do have a couple of questions for you.
Okay, yeah, so like I said, just in summary, we legitimately have a shot with the candidates that we have in background and how things are looking. They're very promising to be fully staffed in the jail by August 1, not fully trained. The candidates that the remaining candidate we have on for patrol, in addition to the one that we just hired, would leave 4 openings. Those 4 openings, as I mentioned, are contract positions. That includes 2 for Rockaway, 1 for Marine, and 1 for Forest. Just a reminder that all of those are reimbursed funds. Those don't cost the county like pennies on the dollar, I guess. But essentially it's pass-through money. But those would be the only 4 positions that we would have open on patrol. Parole and probation will still have an opening as well. Additionally, right now, because of where we were at in the budget process and unknown how many people were going to make it through the background process, we have no openings out open right now. There's no active recruiting because there's too many questions and too many things up in the air. So there are no positions or open positions posted being actively recruited. So as soon as we have some answers and we have a better idea of what our background phases and things like that look like, we're going to reopen them and fully expect that we'll get interest in those as well, because other agencies, the state, etc., they're starting to get that similar interest, and we want to try to ride this positive uptick as much as we can. So we currently have no positions open being recruited simply because there's too many question marks, but once we do, I expect that we will get some interest.
What about the contract positions you said for Rockaway? So there's 2 there?
We have a total of 4 positions that our contract allows for with the city of Rockaway, meaning they will pay us for up to 4 deputies. Right now we have 2 deputies that are assigned to Rockaway. And so we're getting money reimbursed for those 2 deputies that work Rockaway from the city of Rockaway, but the 2 positions that are not filled, we are not getting funds for those. So they're not paying for 2 positions that are not filled.
But are you recruiting for those 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we recruit. We don't necessarily recruit specifically for Rockaway or specifically for the Forest. We recruit to bring a deputy on board, get them trained, and then as we have the ability, we maneuver people.
Are they pushing back? It's kind of a side issue, but is Rockaway pushing back?
That would be a question for Under Sheriff Kelly.
They are frustrated. They want a full allotment of that they're budgeting for, but they're understandable. They're willing to work with us, but they want all 4 deputies as soon as we can provide them, and I totally get that.
But I would also say that the Forestry Department wants their 3rd forest deputy, just as much as Rockaway wants their 2 additional deputies. Same with the Marine Board; they want that additional deputy they've agreed to pay for. So it's kind of the nature of it, and it's not unknown to places like ODF or the Marine Board that sometimes deputies come and go, and there's priorities that offices have to do, because we're not the only office that carries contracts with ODF or U.S. Forest Service or Marine Board and stuff. So it's not uncommon. They understand, but they also want those positions filled, certainly.
Mike, you have a question?
I would just want to make a comment based on the discussion we had last month, where we're at today. As a former mayor of Manzanita, where we operate a small police department, I know how important it is for elected officials and the community at large to support law enforcement. And all law enforcement in the nation is struggling to fill their ranks right now. Everybody knows that. And I think it's important to make this change to the budget that we're going to talk about here in a minute without eliminating positions. And I feel the Sheriff's Department needs our full support in your efforts to fill out your ranks. And if you don't, it just makes your job all the tougher.
Correct.
Because obviously you're competing with everybody who's looking for law enforcement officers. So I understand the long-term challenges for the budget, but I think this is an important thing to do right now because of the circumstances that we're in and other law enforcement departments are in right now. We got to make ourselves competitive and fill these spots. So there's my 2 cents.
And society has changed. You know, we talked about it in our leadership meeting and all the things that we see in the, you know, places that normally don't feel like they need security are starting to talk about, you know, cooperative security agreements and stuff. So it's like, it's, you know, society is different now, in my opinion. And again, it's I was elected to this position, but in my position, from my viewpoint, it just makes law enforcement and or security that much, you know, more important, or not more important, but important.
Other questions for the sheriff or his staff?
Just one other, Sheriff. So, being the former liaison to the sheriff's office, I remember there were some issues with your computer systems in the jail, the locked door systems and all that. Has that all been resolved?
That's been, that upgrade happened, right? Yes, that was upgraded. That was actually part of one of the 4 projects approved for ARPA funds.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, that's been upgraded. You know, the sewer system, which is actually in conjunction with the port, that upgrade's gonna be huge. You know, there was a lot of stuff over the years that just got neglected, and we're trying to play catch up on those. I mean, we had fire extinguishers that were no longer valid, did not meet OSHA requirements, things of that nature. So that's, you know, that's what happens when things get neglected and things pop up. You know, luckily we're able to maneuver some things around, because we, you know, there's some things that we just can't afford to not put some money in, and like, you know, the sprinkler system would be one of them. So other things we can afford to delay a little bit, or, you know, the windows, you know, that replacement is happening now, you know, which it's not an easy project, because you're essentially removing glass and creating a insecure scenario in a secure facility, you know, so you have to put the facility on lockdown, and everybody's got to be on their toes. So the cracked windows are a huge liability, and so we were able to kind of work through that and do that. So, but yes, computer system, doors, all that stuff is upgraded. In addition to that, we entered into an agreement with that same company for a regular maintenance schedule. So things like that get stayed on top of now.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yep.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the septic system? 233,000, did it fail?
No, I was afraid you might ask that, Sean. You might.
I'm not going there.
Okay. So, okay, correct me if I don't know 100% if I can tell you exactly what's going on, but I know we had a meeting with the port. This was prompted by the port, because our sewer system goes to the port, and the port deals with that. And I think that it was a need, not a desire, it was a need for an upgrade. And I believe that what's happening is, in replace of the line that just goes, we're gonna be getting like a septic system, like an actual tank or something to that effect, that in turn still drains to their system. The additional part of that is we affectionately refer to it as a muffin muncher. And there's a big concrete pedestal out in our grass. If you've ever driven out there, you can see it. Probably don't know what it is, but essentially it grinds up all the stuff that gets flushed down the toilets. Believe it or not, those that are in custody like to flush things like towels, blankets, rags, God only knows what. So you have to do that in order to be able to process the refuse. That is not going to be an option, so what they're going to end up having to do is use a different system where they use like a corkscrew that pulls the stuff out, dumps it into a dumpster, and then we're going to have the dumpster hauled away. So if we could just get them to not flush things, but that's just not going to happen. So that is the best I can give you. I know there's probably a lot more to it, and I know the port has very, very detailed plans and everything like that, and they have been in discussion with us, but this was at the port's request out of need. Yeah. That was pretty close, okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't there at one time talk of a sewer extension to the port property? In other words, get it into the treatment plant in the city of Tillamook?
Oh, I have no clue about that.
Ongoing conversation for years.
Yeah, I just wondered where
The
it is.
LCD is not fond of sewers being extended outside of city limits. In fact, it's not allowable. It's one of the housing issues for, being able to put any kind of density outside of city limits, is sewer is not allowed to extend beyond city limits, and that's part of the intention of the state land use system of keeping, density inside city limits. But it creates some challenges for things like this where, clearly it would make sense to have it on the sewer, but it has to go through unincorporated county to get there.
I remember that from my days on the Civic City JWSA, was you could not bring it out, much to the dismay of some people who wanted it for that very reason.
Yeah.
But I understood to recall, there were discussions, but then maybe they've gone nowhere and it's a conversation could be, so. Seems like that would be a solution, unless you can fix the folks that are in custody, and that's probably wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what else for the sheriff? It sounds like there's some progress being made, and that, at least for the time being, and we're talking only about one budget, we've made an effort to look a little further into the future, but ultimately came back to what's before us. So, are we good with the sheriff?
One question I have is, when we talked about the jail being fully staffed, at one point you had said that when the jail is fully staffed with full-time people, you won't need the retiree hires who are currently working scheduled shifts in the jail.
That's
So,
correct.
do you have a plan for that?
Especially not at the level that they're working now. There will be those one-off, situations where maybe there's a special transport that needs to happen or something like that. But generally speaking, and by far and large away, or whatever that phrase is, those will no longer be needed. And overtime will go down to virtually zero. I mean, it will never be zero, but if we're fully staffed and we continue this 12-hour shift program, we'll have 5 deputies on the 2 different day shifts, and then we'll have 4 deputies on the night shifts. So basically, if one person takes a holiday or a vacation day or something, you still have 4 people on. We have minimum staffing of 3, so if somebody's sick and somebody's on vacation, we still have minimum staffing. We don't have to pull overtime. Whereas right now, when you have 3 people on a shift, somebody's sick, somebody goes on vacation, you have 2 people coming in on overtime, and that's not uncommon. So when you stack it up 5 and 5, 4 and 4, you better those chances. Obviously the night shifts, are a lot closer because they only have 4 instead of 5, but theoretically those get pulled up.
That's great.
So the 9,000 hours of overtime you spoke of earlier, that's going to be down substantially.
Yes, I once, and like I said, it's going to be, everything's got to go perfectly to get, everything's got to go through, not lose anybody. Training, academy, things of those nature. But when you have that many staff, there's going to be very rare instances where you have 2 people off at the same time on night shift or 3 people off at the same time on day shift. Where you run into problems is if you have one person that's sick, that's out sick, and then another person has planned vacation time, now you're down to minimum staffing of 3, but then you still have to have a deputy covering the courthouse, and you still have to have a deputy, possibly 2, doing the transports for that day. Those are those rare situations where you may have to call in one of those part-timers to do that transport because you have to maintain that minimum staffing on that particular day, if that makes sense. Or maybe you have a high-profile court trial, and we need a couple of deputies to be in court, and we need staffing in the jail, and we have transports out to the hub, that kind of thing. So, because we do transports twice a week, and that dedicates a deputy, for the entire day to that specific task, and they are unable to work the jail during that time. But yes, it will substantially reduce overtime.
All right, anything else for the sheriff? I see the district attorney is right behind you. Do you have any comments, Ms. Olson, on sheriff and what you've heard? You're about as, I guess, as close to that organization as anybody in the courthouse.
Just that I do support Sheriff Brown and his budget, and I think that his staffing concerns definitely affect all of us in the county, and there's definitely a trickle-down approach, and so I do support him.
Thank you. Any questions for the DA or others? Okay, so.
I will say one more thing. I realize it's not general fund. It has to do with parole and probation. Ani had sent me an email, and she can talk about it a little bit more if need be, but I think I've spoke the last couple of years, and specifically this time, about the reduction in funding and then the reduction of the allocations to each division. And, it looks like the 246 million that the state was going to allocate to parole and probation has been bumped up slightly, which would in turn give Tillamook County about $33,000 more per year. Is that right, Ani?
Total.
Total, $33,000 total, so that's $15,000 a year. that's the adjustment that's been made. It still has not passed at the legislative end of things through Ways and Means. That's what is being proposed, is trying to get that little bit of extra kicker there. But it still looks pretty dire. Again, just kind of giving you guys the heads up, we're okay for this year, but, and we still don't exactly know what they're gonna pass, but, you know, that's something we're keeping a very close eye on as well, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, anybody else, staff or public, or anyone who would care to say anything to this committee? All right, well then, we'll move along, but first I want to ask maybe the three commissioners, when we started this process, there were some fairly significant adjustments being considered in view of the long view, like averaging timber sales, and then maybe reallocation of some contingencies and all those things. And my view on that was these all made considerable sense because the county is going to be around forever, we hope, and that the variable part of the general fund in particular is always an unknown, and it creates some inequities and imbalances and so on. And now we've kind of reversed or taken a step back. I'd like to hear just from the committee's perspective, from the three of you, is where do you think this is headed over the next 3 to 5 years? Will it require some more adjustments, or steady as she goes, or where are we?
I think it might very well require some more adjustments. I appreciate the treasurer's message of caution, caution ahead is what I heard her saying. And I think we have work to do in the next year about prioritizing. If in fact we have to make cuts, how do we prioritize those? How do we live with that? What's important to us? How do we plan it? And maybe it'll be through hiring freeze. I think we have yet to do the work to decide how that'll happen. And hopefully it won't be necessary, but if it is necessary, then it is. And I had a helpful conversation with Karen Dye, who was a former treasurer, was talking to me about this has happened historically. It happens not frequently, but it does happen that the budget has to, you have to make some adjustments. So I think we need to work together on it, and it's entirely possible that we'll have more revenue than we're anticipating, which is certainly everybody's hope. I think, and the other important thing that I think probably every board of commissioners has always talked about is how do we generate more revenue? Because those are your two things. You can generate more revenue or you can make cuts, one or the other. So I think there's work to be done in that also.
So from a state forest revenue viewpoint, I think the county's going to be okay for the next year or two. This is the cautionary tale that I told the Neal County School District. When you look at the HCP, and we're trying to get that changed, but it's like moving the Titanic at the very last minute. That's going to happen. Something's going to happen with the HCP. It's not going to be pretty. At the same time, over the next year, over the next 2 years, over the next 3 years, you're going to see the costs of doing business for the county continue to increase. Even if we don't add extra personnel, costs are going to continue to increase. Again, forest revenue, I think, is going to remain stable, as well as we can say stable over the next year or two. After that, all bets are off. We're currently predicting somewhere between a 23 to 32% decrease in timber revenue. Again, not immediate. This is going to take some time to actualize. So that's the area that I tell everyone to be very careful. That's what I told the Neal County School District. Don't spend all your money today just because you haven't. It's good to have reserves. And so we're making a decision now. We're spending a lot of our reserves, which could be a problem in the future. So, again, with inflation as it is today, unions demanding more money every year, revenue stabilizing flat for the next year or two, and then with possibly a downturn in revenue in the future. We just need to be very careful moving forward. We do. Hopefully, this will not come to pass, but unfortunately, that's not the scenario that I have in my own head. So we just need to be careful.
Well, it sounds like in the long term, you're not gonna be able to rely on forest revenue. I mean, you're talking 10 years from now or something. In the meantime, it seems like the county, the industry that keeps growing in this county, although is tourism. The demands on the sheriff's department is coming from people coming down here and visiting all the time. We're gonna have to start studying or doing some thought of how we can capture some revenue. If they come down and visit, how can they pay their way?
Yes.
Because there's more working down, the sheriff's department's got more to do, the road department's got more to do, we're all more busy. And you can't rely on the timber revenue, which is gonna eventually probably disappear.
And that's what the state is actually doing right now. They're trying to turn all of our state forests into parks. They do. And there is talk about making the counties whole when it comes to timber revenue. First of all, I don't know where the state's gonna get the money to do
Good
that.
question.
And then even if they do that, the biggest component of that are the fully benefited family wage forestry jobs. And if those start to go away, again, it's just a downturn and it's gonna start to spiral. Again, hopefully none of this is gonna happen. But right now, it's just what the state is trying to do.
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners, we're in a difficult position. I agree with the sheriff, with the treasurer, I appreciate the cautionary tale. I went back and looked at our budget messages from the last 4 years, and just prior to COVID, we were looking at starting to talk about the revenue shortfall, potential recession, the economy really looking like it was gonna be difficult for us, not having the revenue we need. And then we kind of got to step away from that for a couple of years with COVID. It sort of created this false environment and economy for us where we had unexpected dollars, we had unexpected staff shortfalls, and I think we sort of all got to step away and go, hey, we're doing good. We've got this beginning fund balance, we'll be able to, to get what we need to get and go where we want to go. And this year sort of just hit us in the face, and I think that, for me, it was very striking to work with Sean on the budget and realize how much this is reminiscent of 4 years ago when I started on the budget committee and the difficult conversations we were starting to have, but then got to put on hold. So our future is uncertain. We do have work to do. I can appreciate very much that we want and need the law enforcement that we have. I am very sorry that the conversation in the community turned to an unintended conversation about being against law enforcement. That was absolutely never the conversation as intended. And I very much apologize for any part I played in having that conversation be generated out there. It was extremely detrimental, I think, to this process, and I will say to relationships in the community. So I apologize for my role in that. Never was the intention. We do have a budget problem. We want to be able to pay our staff what they're worth. We want to be able to provide benefits and holidays and all of the things that our staff deserve. And I look out into the future and I see us being extremely challenged to do that without really being cautious about what we're creating. So I appreciate and am thankful that we have the reserves we have to give us a year to do the work, as Commissioner Bell suggested, together to determine what the future of the county will be financially, how we generate more revenue, if that's the answer that we are wanting to do. We've looked at a lot of things for generating more revenue. The sheriff himself has done a great job of bringing forward a lot of things that have been tried in other parts of the state, other taxes, those kinds of things. We're going to have to do the hard political work probably of ultimately putting some of those things on the table to see what our constituents are willing to look at to keep the services they value. So, we have the funding in our reserve to get through this year. We have funding in our reserve perhaps to get through next year, but I think it just puts an exclamation point on the urgency of us making decisions about which direction we're gonna go and how we hope to get there, so. I look forward to passing this budget and the sheriff having excellent recruitment and figuring out how we maintain the services that are crucial.
Okay, thank you. I'll just add my 2 cents as your chair. I've been on this committee now quite a while, and I've seen it go up and down. It's been a sine wave over the years, but I would say just when I see what goes on at the state level and here, and elsewhere in Oregon and Washington, California, even for that matter, I think things are changing, not necessarily in a good way, and I appreciate the efforts that came from many of you and all of us to restructure and make a few significant changes that might help cover that or ease into it or deal with it more thoughtfully. And then there was some pushback, and the community got alarmed, as is completely natural and expected. But I think we're at a point now where that's going to be soon ancient history, because the staffing was there, and I've never heard any of us, the 6 of us, and the 3 of you especially, say that we need to do something drastic to law enforcement. Just exactly the opposite. But I do see at the state level some significant changes, and I'm not sure that they'll change. And so I guess my advice to the 6 of us, and looking back, is don't give up on the long-term goal. It's easy. It's not easy, but you can deal with a budget year by year by year simply by making hard choices and getting people excited and doing what you need to do. But that's really not the long haul, because, as I said earlier, the county will be here forever, for longer than any of us, for sure. And to the extent you can say, okay, let's look at 3 years, 5 years, even 7, 10, 12 years instead of 1 and 2. To me, from a public policy perspective, makes a whole lot more sense. Now, how you do that, you look at all the options and weigh them like any other decision. But it seems to me the state of Oregon, and I'm a native Oregonian and I've been here nearly all my life, there seems to be a more profound effort now to change things than there was maybe 5 or 10 or 20 years ago. I was talking at our state utility meeting here, I guess a couple of weeks ago, with one senator, Senator Anderson, who was one of the senators still showing up where he's supposed to show up, and our lobby people and others. And I remember a meeting, I guess it's been about 12 years ago, where there were 2 meetings, one month and the next one. The first one we had then co-speaker Arnie Roblin, who then became a senator, but he was the Speaker of the House. He was a co-speaker, and Bruce Hanna was a Republican from Roseburg, who was also co-speaker. It was 30-30 in the House, and I remember that well. And they sat before this group of utility people, about 50 of us, I guess, and they said, there's not a thing that goes through the Oregon legislature that is not good public policy, because either side won't move forward. And we've lost that somehow in Oregon. I don't know what happened, and maybe nobody does, but it seems to me now we're kind of going the wrong way, and that trickles down to cities and counties, because so much money comes from the state. And so to the extent you can build our own fortress, so to speak, around Tillamook County and say, well, whatever they do over there, we're going to take care of our own business, and we're going to remain solvent. We're going to keep our good employees going. We're going to do what we need to do for the citizens. And just because you don't know. And so that's just, I guess, my experience of many years of sitting over in Salem and watching this stuff. It just seems to me it's becoming way more difficult than it should, and much more adversarial. And that's a shame. I'm happy that this group got through this, and that we're good, like you said, Commissioner, for the next year or 2. But 3 and 5 years out, I would worry a bit, particularly if the forest comes to pass and that money goes away, because that's been a large part of the general fund for a long time. And it's just like, we've all heard the story, Public Works at one time had 48 or 50 employees, and now they're down to 18 or 20, and things change. And so be nimble, think on your feet, and make Tillamook County the rising, or the star of Oregon's counties, I guess. So of my 2 cents on this. So thank you all for offering comments on where we've been. So now, we're up on the approval of the budget. So I'm going to ask the treasurer now, do we approve both, the entire budget, including special funds, everything?
Correct.
Because we didn't do that separately last time, right? Okay, so then what is before us now is the budget in total, including all special funds and any other funds, plus the general fund that we now appear to be, have a consensus on the way forward. So we'll consider that and then go and discuss the tax levies, read them into the record, and we'll be set for next year. So entertain a motion for the budget for the next fiscal year.
I move we approve the budget as presented for the next fiscal year.
I second.
All right, moved and seconded that the Budget Committee of Tillamook County approve the budget for fiscal year 23-24 as presented and discussed today. I'll add that language if that's okay. All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? Thank you. Budget has, motion has passed, the budget is approved, and Madam Treasurer, you're set, you got a job. All right, so now I'll read the levies, and there are several. I'll read them into the record, and do we need then a motion to approve them as well? Probably do. Okay, so there are 4 levies that I believe they're all carried forward from prior approvals, some of them by ballot, some of them by, well, I guess they're basically all by voter action. So first we have, there are 5, the General Services Permanent Tax Rate as adopted by Tillamook County some years back based on some actions at the state level is $1.4986 per thousand. So that's $1.4986 per $1,000 of assessed valuation. That's the first one. Second one is the library local option tax, which is 65 cents per $1,000. Next one is the veteran service local option tax, 7 cents per $1,000. Then the library debt service levy, $249,900 even, fixed dollar amount. And the last one is the road debt service levy, which is $1,528,600. So those are the amounts. Some are a rate per thousand, and 2 of them are a fixed dollar amount. So, any questions on the levies? Levy amounts. All right, I'll entertain a motion then to approve these, and then they can be taken forward.
Can I do these in one motion? I don't have to do-
No, let's do them all together. I think that'll be all right.
I move we approve the tax levies as presented for 2023-2024 budget.
All right, thank you.
I second.
All right, moved and seconded to approve the tax levies as read into the record for fiscal year 23 and 24. Any further discussions, questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, motion carries. Okay, we are into the record. So now, let's see, we've approved the tax levies. Are there any other matters, non-agenda items, or anything that needs to come before this committee? Anything from the treasurer? Have we overlooked anything? You gonna call us in again, or we're good?
Not this fiscal year, I will for next fiscal year, mid-year update.
Okay, as we've been doing the past few years. Okay, well then if there's nothing else, we will adjourn at 1:51. Thank you all.
Oh,
Thank you.
quick.